In the medical facility on board the Helix Peacemaker craft, the sterile illumination cast an eerie glow, with the chamber's surfaces subtly throbbing in sync with the vessel's man-made gravitation. A group of alien healers, their bodies slender and skin semi-transparent, revealing their dimly lit veins, gathered anxiously around a stasis chamber. Within it, a formidable entity lay dormant, its vast body stretched out in a restful menace. This being bore a resemblance to an earth bear but was adorned with an extra row of jointed talons on its front limbs and shimmering fur. The light danced off its coat in mesmerizing patterns. Its mouth, filled with jagged teeth designed for crushing bone, and its nostrils, which flared even in its slumber, sensing the unseen. Dr. K, the chief healer, handled his medical tools with unsteady limbs, muttering, "This is folly, attending to a Golanth-top predator. Such creatures should be confined to strong chambers or the abyss, not a clinic." But Dallin, his assistant, countered, "It strayed into Peacemaker lands. Showing kindness might foster talks with the Oran clans." Dr. Creel snorted, "Compassion is one thing, being devoured due to ineffective tranquilizers is quite another." As the tension escalated, a fresh voice chimed in, "Looks like you've all seen a specter." All attention shifted to the man at the threshold. A human, he wore a work-stained jumpsuit and adjusted his circular spectacles, his face a blend of amusement and resolve. "You summoned the specialist, then?" Cole's tone wavered, his disbelief evident. "Veterinarian," Carter clarified, stepping forward, "I specialize in large predators." "Sounds like you have a significant case here." Dow's skin deepened to a more intense shade of blue. "This isn't an Earth creature, it's a Golanth, a Class S predator that can dismantle whole Peacemaker teams." "Great," Carter replied, unfazed, as he placed his heavy bag on a nearby surface. The alien healers exchanged doubtful glances. Dow approached, his glow intensifying. "Do you truly believe you can manage this beast?" Carter shrugged. "Big teeth, sharp claws, fierce nature? I've handled worse." "Ever tried to sedate a tiger while hanging from a branch?" Creel interjected, "It's not about sedation, its biology is." "Relax," Carter cut in, displaying various syringes and tools better suited for a garage than a medical facility. "You've scanned this creature, right? Show me what we're dealing with." Dallin hesitated, then activated a console. The hologram of the creature's internal structure appeared, rotating to display its robust skeletal framework, heavily shielded organs, and alarmingly efficient vascular system. "Interesting," Carter commented, examining the holographic display. "Hearts placed oddly, lungs unusually high. What's the injury?" Dallin highlighted a section of the abdomen with several deep, oozing gashes. "Territorial conflict injuries. It's fighting an internal infection." "Standard treatment's ineffective?" Carter guessed, delving into his bag. "You need a broad-spectrum antibiotic, something gentle on the liver." Silence filled the room. Cole frowned. "What's that?" "An antibiotic," Carter explained. "Effective on various species." "You don't have it?" Dow admitted they did not. "Thought so," Carter said, producing a vial. "Good thing I brought some." "Let's sedate it first." Creel protested as Carter prepared a massive syringe. "Our strongest sedatives barely affect it." "Understood, high tolerance," Carter noted, mixing the contents skillfully. The healers recoiled as he approached the stasis chamber. Cole trembled. "If it wakes, we're doomed." "Not if I time this correctly," Carter assured, pressing a button to open the chamber. As the air filled with a heavy scent of musk and ozone, Carter quickly administered the injection. The creature stirred, eyes flickering open momentarily before a deep growl vibrated through the floor. Then, its body relaxed further into unconsciousness. "See, simple," Carter said, wiping his forehead while the healers looked on in stunned silence. Dallin finally spoke, What did you administer? Ketamine, and a bit more for the nerves, Carter replied, beckoning for help that didn't come. He sighed, grabbing surgical tools. Guess I'm on my own. Typical. As he worked, he explained each step. First, remove all dead tissue. This infection runs deep. I'll pack the wounds with antimicrobial gel and stitch it up. Might need a drain. How can you remain so composed? Creel asked. You're dealing with a monster that could consume me. Shoo, Carter hushed, focused on his task, but it's also a living being in agony. My duty is to assist, not panic over possibilities. By the end of the procedure, the creature's wounds were neatly closed, and a steady drip of antibiotics flowed into its veins. Carter stood back, hands on his hips. Should heal nicely, provided it doesn't gnaw through the stitches. Dallin blinked. How can you be certain this will succeed? Can't, Carter admitted, but it's better than doing nothing. Monitor it closely. If it develops a fever or stops eating, call me. As he packed his tools, Creel approached cautiously. Dr. Carter, you've disregarded all conventional wisdom, yet you might have saved this creature. Carter grinned. Not bad for a vet, eh? He slung his bag over his shoulder, heading for the exit. Don't forget to check its excrement, it tells you more than scans. The healers watched him leave, their admiration mixed with bewilderment. Throughout their long careers, they had never met anyone like this remarkable, daring human. The creature stirred a day later, its massive form shifting restlessly in the pod, its pupilless eyes scanning its environment with predatory keenness. Dr. Creel and Dallin stood by, monitoring its vitals nervously. It's awakening, Dallin whispered, his glow fluctuating with his nerves. Of course, Creel grunted, that human solution wore off too soon. This was a catastrophe in waiting. As the creature's growl intensified, the medical facility's structure shook, its claws scraping against the pod. They exchanged fearful glances as an alarm started to chime. Before they could react, the door slid open, and Dr. Carter strode in, holding a coffee mug, appearing remarkably unruffled. Morning, how's our patient? Creel frantically pointed at the pod. It's conscious, you fool. Do you grasp the implications? Sure do, Carter said, setting down his mug and pulling out a tablet. He tapped a few commands, releasing a faint mist into the pod. The creature's growl waned, and its eyes blinked sleepily. What did you do? Dal asked, his veins glowing more intensely. Calm it down, Carter replied. Used a mix of valerian root and lavender oil, wonders on stressed predators back home. Dal's skin turned a deeper shade of blue. You subdued a Class S predator with scented vapors? Yep, Carter affirmed, approaching the pod. Let's see how it's healing. The creature's massive head followed him, but it remained relaxed. Carter crouched by the pod, peering inside. Hey big guy, feeling better? The creature huffed, its breath fogging the glass. Carter smiled. Yeah, you look much less murderous today. Let's check those stitches. Cole watched, horrified, as Carter opened a small hatch on the pod and reached inside. The creature did not attack. Instead, it sniffed his hand cautiously, then rumbled softly, a sound almost akin to contentment. It's responding to him, Dal murmured. Why isn't it attacking? Probably because I smell like peanut butter and antiseptic, Carter explained, checking the stitches. Predators respect confidence too. If you act scared, they'll treat you like prey. Creel threw up his appendages. This is madness. You're treating it like a domesticated companion. Nope, Carter corrected, adjusting a suture. I'm treating it like an intelligent being that's in pain. There's a difference. Over the following days, the creature's recovery became a topic of conversation on the Peacemaker vessel. News of the human's unorthodox methods spread, drawing curious crew members to the medical facility. Carter welcomed the attention, patiently explaining his techniques to anyone interested. It's not about brute force or overwhelming them with technology, he told an engrossed engineer. You've got to understand their instincts and work with them, not against them. Meanwhile, Creel remained dubious. Your methods are perilous, he remarked one evening as Carter prepared another antibiotic dose. If this creature becomes violent, we'll be blamed for any harm to the crew. Maybe, Carter replied, focusing on his task, but if we let it perish, the Oran clans might view that as a hostile act. What's riskier? An irate predator or a conflict with its entire race? Creel had no response. The true test of Carter's methods came a week later when the creature began showing signs of distress. It paced its enclosure, claws clicking against the floor, growling increasingly. The healers quickly identified the problem, a blockage in its digestive tract. This is beyond us, Creel stated, stepping away from the diagnostic scans. The surgery risk is immense. Yet not impossible, Carter finished, examining the hologram. We just need to get inventive. You mean reckless, Creel muttered, ignored by Carter as he gathered his surgical equipment. We'll need to sedate it again, but I'll also use physical restraints and a nerve block. Anesthesia alone won't suffice. Creel hesitated. Do you genuinely believe you can perform surgery on this creature? Believe? Not exactly, Carter admitted, but I've extracted tumors from a Siberian tiger under worse conditions. I like my odds. With Dow's reluctant help, Carter prepared the medical facility for the operation, detailing every step from sterilizing the tools to establishing a sterile field around the creature. As the surgery commenced, the healers watched in silent amazement. Carter's movements were precise, his hands steady as he navigated the creature's complex anatomy. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his focus never wavered. Almost there, he announced, using a specialized tool to remove the obstruction, a mass of partially digested bone and fur. Got it. Now, let's close this up before it awakens. After hours of intense effort, the procedure was complete. Carter stepped back, stretching his arms. That's one fortunate creature, should be as good as new shortly. Creel approached cautiously, his expression unreadable. You may have achieved the impossible. Cool, Carter responded, wiping his hands on a towel. Keep it hydrated and watch for infection. Oh, and maybe don't feed it anything too crunchy for a while. When the creature had sufficiently recovered to be released, the medical facility was crowded with spectators. Carter stood by the pod as the hatch opened, allowing the predator to step onto the reinforced floor. The creature turned to face him, and for a moment, the room held its breath. Then, the creature lowered its massive head, emitting a low, humming sound. Carter grinned. Yeah, you're welcome, big guy. The creature lumbered toward the exit, pausing to glance back at the human one last time before vanishing into the ship's corridors. Creel approached, his tone begrudgingly respectful. I never thought I'd say this, but you've altered my perspective, Dr. Carter. Glad to hear it, Carter replied, sipping his coffee. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a llama with a dental issue waiting for me back on Earth. The healers watched him depart, their awe and confusion lingering. The legend of the human vet who tamed an apex predator would be a tale they recounted for generations. The creature's release back into the wilds of its territory should have concluded the episode, but days later, the Oran peacekeeper vessel received an urgent message from the Oran clans, whose representatives sought a meeting. The Oran were a proud, secretive race, seldom engaging in diplomacy unless provoked, or, as now, deeply intrigued. Dr. K stood in the command center with Dallin and Carter, watching the unfolding transmission on the central holographic display. The emissary, a towering figure with a mane of shimmering quills, spoke in a deep, resonant tone. The creature has returned to our lands. It shows no hostility, and its injuries have healed remarkably fast. Explain how this was achieved. The captain, a stoic figure with an exoskeleton like polished stone, gestured to Carter. This human was in charge of its care. The emissary's quills bristled slightly. A human? These beings are known to domesticate their own predators, but this is no ordinary beast. This is unexpected. Arms crossed, chewing on an energy bar, Carter waved casually at the hologram. "Hi there. Name's Carter, just doing my job." The room tensed as the emissary considered him. "Your techniques are intriguing. The creature is revered among our people as a symbol of strength and resilience. To mend such a being, you must possess extraordinary abilities or sheer audacity." "A bit of both," Carter replied, unfazed by the imposing figure. "Your big guy was in rough shape. I just applied what I know to patch it up." The emissary's tone softened, a hint of curiosity weaving through their formal words. "Your knowledge is unconventional. We request that you come to our territory to share it." Creel leaned closer to Carter. "You can't seriously consider accepting this invitation. The Oran territories are hazardous, even for experienced diplomats." Carter shrugged. "They asked nicely, plus I'm curious to see what their other apex predators are like." 2 days later, Carter found himself aboard a sleek Oran transport, accompanied by a wary Creel and an intrigued Dallin. The journey through the densely packed nebula bordering Oran space was rough but uneventful. Upon arrival, Carter was struck by the planet's vivid landscape. Giant trees with iridescent leaves soared upward, their roots weaving through a network of glowing moss. Rivers of luminescent liquid meandered across the terrain, their flow pulsing in rhythm with some unseen force. The air was a blend of earthy and metallic scents, with the distant calls of unknown creatures resounding in the background. The Oran emissary led them to a sprawling settlement where towering structures of woven crystal and stone sparkled in the sunlight. At the heart of the settlement was a vast pen surrounded by orange-clad sentinels, their weapons humming with latent energy. Inside the pen was another creature, larger than the first and clearly suffering. Its movements were lethargic, and its fur lacked its usual luster. Carter narrowed his eyes as he approached the pen, scanning the creature's posture and breathing. "What's wrong with it?" Dallin inquired. Carter pointed to the creature's abdomen, where faint ridges were visible beneath the fur. "Looks like an obstruction, probably something it ate that didn't agree with it. Common issue with predators, they're not selective about their diet." The emissary regarded Carter with evident skepticism. "You claim this is a routine problem, yet none of our healers have managed to relieve its discomfort." "Your healers aren't accustomed to dealing with apex predators," Carter retorted, donning a pair of gloves. "Let me inside, and I'll have a look." Cole stepped forward, his tone adamant. "Absolutely not. This is far too perilous." "Relax," Carter interjected. "It's too weak to pose a threat, and if it does become aggressive, I've got a few tricks left." The Oran exchanged uneasy glances but eventually allowed him access to the pen. Carter moved cautiously, the creature's luminous eyes following him, its growl soft and lacking vigor. "Hey there, big guy," Carter spoke gently, pressing his hands against the creature's abdomen, searching for irregularities. The creature huffed, but its demeanor remained passive. After a moment, Carter nodded to himself. "Yeah, it's an obstruction, a big one. We'll need to flush this out." He turned to the emissary. "Got any sedatives? Something strong enough to keep it under for a while?" The emissary hesitated. "We have tranquilizers, but they've been ineffective against such creatures." "Figures," Carter muttered, pulling a vial from his bag and preparing a syringe. "Good thing I came prepared. This mix should do the trick." The Orans watched in silence as Carter administered the sedative, his calm demeanor sharply contrasting with their visible anxiety. Within minutes, the creature was unconscious, and Carter began the delicate task of removing the obstruction. Using a combination of tools, he worked quickly, explaining his actions as he proceeded. "Looks like it swallowed something metallic, likely from a skirmish." Its digestive system couldn't handle it, so it's been causing trouble. When he finally extracted a jagged shard of alien metal, the Orans gasped. The shard glinted with an otherworldly sheen, its edges razor sharp. "That's what I thought," Carter said, holding it up. "No wonder it was in pain, this thing's brutal." He spent the next hour cleaning and suturing the wound, ensuring the creature's vitals remained stable. When he finished, his gloves were stained, and he looked visibly exhausted. The Oran erupted into murmurs of amazement. "You have achieved what we could not," the emissary declared, their tone reverent. "Your expertise surpasses our understanding of these creatures." Carter shrugged, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Nah, it's just experience. Deal with enough large, grumpy animals, and you learn a few things." As the creature began to stir, the emissary stepped closer to Carter. "Your methods are unconventional, but the results are undeniable. Perhaps there is merit in your unique approach." "Glad you think so," Carter replied, stretching his arms. "Now, got anything to eat around here?" "I'm starving." The creature slowly roused, its massive body shifting as it woke from sedation. Its glowing eyes flickered open, emitting a low, rumbling growl more from confusion than aggression. Carter remained still, observing its movements carefully. "Easy, big guy," he soothed, raising his hands. "You're going to feel much better soon." The creature sniffed the air, its gaze locking onto Carter. After a tense moment, it lowered its head, clearly worn out but no longer in distress. The Oran, gathered at a safe distance, erupted into murmurs of awe. "You have soothed it once again," the emissary noted, stepping forward. "Its suffering seems to have vanished. Your skill is unmatched." "Thanks," Carter said, wiping his brow. "But it's not magic, just understanding the problem and addressing it without exacerbating the situation." The emissary tilted their head, their quills shimmering faintly. "You speak as though such understanding is simple, yet we have studied these creatures for generations and failed where you have succeeded." "Maybe that's part of the problem," Carter suggested, stepping out of the pen. "You study them from afar, treat them like puzzles that can't be solved. Me? I just roll up my sleeves and get to work. Animals are animals, whether they have fangs or feathers." Creel, who had been observing from the edge of the settlement, approached hesitantly. "I must admit, Carter, your methods have proven effective. But this doesn't explain why the creature responded to you so uniquely." Carter grinned. "Because I'm human. We're apex predators too, remember? Sometimes it's just about earning their respect." The comment elicited a mix of reactions, some skeptical, others thoughtful. The emissary's quills bristled slightly as they turned toward the creature, which was now drinking from a nearby stream. "The creature's recovery will be seen as a powerful symbol among my people. It will represent resilience and cooperation, concepts we must embrace in a galaxy as unpredictable as ours." "Glad I could help," Carter said. "But I've got to ask, why do you care so much about these guys? They're just predators, right?" The emissary's gaze darkened slightly. "They are far more than that. These creatures embody our planet's primal forces. To protect them is to honor the balance of life that sustains us all. When they suffer, we suffer." Carter nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Makes sense. Back on Earth, we have species that act as keystones for their ecosystems. Lose them, and the whole system collapses. Sounds like your creatures are similar." The emissary inclined their head. "Indeed. Your actions here have preserved more than a single life, you've safeguarded a vital part of our world." As the sun set over the Oran settlement, Carter found himself seated around a glowing fire pit, surrounded by Oran elders. The shimmering flames cast dancing reflections on their crystalline structures, and the air buzzed with the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. The meal served was unlike anything Carter had encountered, a mix of spiced roots, glowing fruit, and a broth that seemed to hum faintly with energy. He hesitated initially, but hunger won out, and he found the flavors surprisingly rich and complex. "Not bad," he remarked, taking another bite. "Reminds me of curry, if curry glowed in the dark." Dallin, seated beside him, leaned closer. "You truly eat with such ease. Many of these compounds are likely untested on your physiology." "Call it a leap of faith," Carter said, grinning. "Besides, humans are built to eat just about anything. Comes with being an apex omnivore." Creel, sitting across from him, muttered something under his breath but didn't object. The Orin elders, meanwhile, seemed fascinated by Carter's casual demeanor. "You are unlike any healer we have known," one of them said, their voice a melodic hum. "You approach each challenge with a simplicity that belies its complexity." "That's just how we roll," Carter replied, leaning back. "Sometimes, overthinking a problem is what gets you stuck. Better to try something than sit around waiting for perfection." The emissary, seated beside the elders, nodded thoughtfully. "There is wisdom in your words, Carter. Perhaps our people have focused too much on theory and tradition, neglecting the value of action." "Hey, I'm all for tradition," Carter said, "but it's got to make room for new ideas too. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of rules and no progress." The group sat in contemplative silence for a moment, the firelight reflecting in their eyes. Finally, the emissary spoke again. "Your time here has taught us much, human. We will share what we have learned from you with our healers and our people. In doing so, we hope to honor the spirit of cooperation you have shown us." Carter raised his cup of glowing broth in a mock toast. "Here's to patching up predators and making friends along the way." The Orin mirrored the gesture, their quills shimmering brightly in the firelight. As dawn broke over the Orin encampment, Carter prepared to depart. The creature, now fully recovered, watched him from a distance, its luminous eyes filled with a strange mix of recognition and respect. "Looks like it's going to be fine," Carter said, shouldering his duffel bag. "Keep an eye on it, though, and maybe don't let it snack on metal anymore." The emissary approached, their quills lowered in a gesture of gratitude. "You have our deepest thanks, Carter. Your actions have strengthened the bond between our species. Should you ever return, you will be welcomed as a friend." "Appreciated," Carter said, shaking their hand. "But next time, maybe don't wait until things are dire to ask for help." "Yeah," the emissary inclined their head. "We will remember your advice." As Carter boarded the transport vessel with Creel and Dallin, he glanced back at the creature one last time. It let out a low, rumbling sound, something between a growl and a purr, before turning and disappearing into the wilds. "You've done something extraordinary, Carter," Dallin said as the transport lifted off. "I doubt even you realize the full impact of your actions." "Probably not," Carter admitted, leaning back in his seat. "But if I've learned anything, it's that you don't have to understand everything to make a difference. Sometimes, you just got to roll up your sleeves and try." Creel, sitting nearby, grumbled, "A philosophy as maddening as it is effective." Carter smirked. "I'll take that as a compliment." As the transport carried them away from the glowing world of the Orin, Carter stared out at the stars, a faint smile on his face. It wasn't every day you got to save a life, mend bridges between species, and earn the respect of a creature that could devour you in one gulp. For a simple vet, it wasn't a bad day's work.